I was signed in 2005 by Oak Records and Ray Ruff, who is a music industry mogul. Ray signed the likes of, George Strait, Dwight Yoakam, Hank Jr. So I was definitely in good company. He and I really hit it off big time and quick, when we met. But unfortunately, my time with Ray was cut pretty short because Ray passed away suddenly about 2 weeks before my first single was released. So, it took a minute for the dust to settle for Ray's death to really sink in on everybody. I had a lot of promises from Oak Records and the executives there, and Oak Records was backed by Sony Nashville at the time. And so it was my first lesson in the music industry for sure. And I knew that I had to get, all these things in writing, which I did, but I ended up getting my contract dissolved. I went on to Castle Records in Nashville, where I recorded my self-titled debut album, J.D. Hardy. I believe I had 10, 12 tracks on that one. Great album. Absolutely loved it. I worked with Ed Russell back there. Amazing man, great producer, great musicians, and we turned out to have a really good album with some good success. So after my debut album, I came out with 3 more albums, all which had some good success. I believe probably my most favorite one, where I'm like, okay, I'm in my sound, I'm in my groove, I've got my, my voice is on point, my songwriting's on point, was my latest album, Killer, which I did in Nashville at the Omni Studio on Music Row with Dean Miller. Dean is the son of Roger Miller, King of the Road. And Dean is an amazing human, number one. Number two, great producer, access to all the best musicians in the world that he put on my album. I got to work with Guthrie Trapp, which is a phenomenal guitar picker. And, these guys make or break your album, and Killer just came out amazing. I loved it.
It's that time again, get jacked up again. Been an 80-hour week and that's too damn long. Gonna get lit up again. Hang out with all my friends.
So I have a single coming out this year, Rattlesnake Shake. I recorded that at the Cash Cabin with John Carter Cash, the son of Johnny Cash and June Carter. I recorded that at the Cash Cabin, where it's really like a museum for Johnny and June and their legacy. But not just theirs, it's like every industry person that you can think of, every artist you can think of has recorded there, and certainly a lot of my favorites. And I was even surprised to see that one of my favorite artists, Chris Cornell of Soundgarden, recorded some of his solo stuff there, which was pretty huge. But yeah, man, that was a incredible, surreal experience for me. Working with John Carter Cash was amazing. He's a great guy. Man, I just really enjoyed him. He would get inside the studio and really like listen to it and feel it, and then he would direct it and produce it, and he was amazing. There's some times where he would, just disappear. Like, where did he go? But out behind the Cash Cabin studio, he had all these like the rubber targets that would be like, a deer or an elk or a moose or a pig. And he'd be out there shooting them with his bow and arrow. And I love that because it's just one of those things where, to keep that creative juice flowing, you got to have these little times when you can just exit out real quick and kind of let it all process, let it all sink in so that you can find your direction. And it worked for me as well. So I would absolutely 1,000% record with John Carter Cash again, or any of the people I've worked with. They're all pros, but I've had a very fun career. I've been able to open up for Trace Adkins, Easton Corbin, shared the ticket with Randy Houser and Tyler Farr, Swan Brothers. Almost got on the ticket. Well, I was on the ticket with Alabama, which was amazing, but kind of a last-minute complications with a venue, and the show was canceled. So, but I've been with a lot of them, and I've seen it all. I've done it all. I'm looking forward to my new single, Rattlesnake Shake, to come out. But, for me, it was a lifestyle I couldn't sustain living it the way I was because I had become an alcoholic. I had developed a lot of bad road habits and kind of the toxic habits that go along with being a recording artist. It's one of those things where we didn't think that we were living up to the best of our ability unless we were whiskeyed out and cocained out. And that's the truth of the situation. I wish it could be different. I used to hide from that knowledge, of letting people know that, but that was something I did in secret. Obviously, when I got drunk and coked out or whatever it was that I was doing, it all came out, and people could see it. But we tried to cover it up as much as possible and, just keep moving forward. But it got to a point where I couldn't do it anymore. And I got tired. I got so far away from who I was and who I am as a person. And I definitely needed to make a change. So in 2018, November 5th, I had chosen to, for the first time ever, to get sober. So the person who I was born to be, or my purpose was to be, was not who I was living. And it's something that I knew. I had a good Christian upbringing. My grandpa was a minister. He was the pastor of the church I went to, that I grew up in. So I knew better, definitely from the way I was living. However, I never really experienced a relationship with Christ. I only had a religionship. And that was a deal for me right there where it's like, what the heck is that? I knew Jesus through religion. I didn't know Jesus as my friend or as my savior or as my big brother, like the Bible says. And I believe God started to work in my life at that point. However, it took me literally 4 years from 2018 to 2021 to get sober. I had all these different trials and errors. I'd go about 4 or 5 months, 6 months, and then I'd be relapsing and then, back into my drama, back into my alcoholism. And I did a show, my last show, which was in 2021. It's my last show drunk and coked out. And it was in 2021. It was at there was a professional motorcycle race, and it was the, Saturday night, good times, dance and barbecue after the big race. And I was on about a 3-day bender at that moment. I don't even remember doing the show. However, I did have people tell me it was one of the best country shows they seen. Now, they probably were also inebriated, but, I think it was right then that I was scared. And I was like, you know what? This is not working. I said 4 years ago I was going to change, and I didn't. And I just needed to do something different. But this time I was serious, and this time was December 31st, 2021. And I just began to, inundate myself with the knowledge of sobriety. I began to grow closer to God. I began to do things a whole lot different than I was before in 2018 when I decided to get sober. And I knew that nothing else I tried to do would work. I literally turned over every stone. I dotted every I, crossed every T to see if there's any way possible I could have alcohol in my life and be normal. But there just wasn't. I'm an alcoholic. And alcoholics have a certain gene that turns them into an all-out or all-in personality, and that's definitely would describe me. So yeah, I was struggling, but I was bound and determined at this point to definitely not ever drink alcohol again. I didn't want the lifestyle. I didn't like myself when I was drunk. I didn't like myself when I was doing the things that I was doing, and I wanted the change to be permanent. So I just like went in and inundated myself with all this knowledge, got closer to God, began a relationship with Jesus, and reestablished my relationship with Jesus, actually. And, you know, it was difficult for sure, but it wasn't as hard as I thought, until what I realized is these emotions that were coming up and these trapped traumas, as I've learned, that I had been suppressing for all these years with alcohol and drugs. And, you know, as they began to come up, at that point, I had just leaned into it and, you know, began to heal from it. The thing that got me out of my way and out of my rut was nutrition. I had to be addicted to something, and because it's my personality. And with me, there's no changing that. And if you're an alcoholic out there, there's no changing that in you either. You know, so what we have to do is we have to put that into something positive. And I put it into nutrition, to health, to fitness, and I began to reinvent myself and to transform myself into a healthier version of me. And I began to, I committed myself to my betterment, that I was going to get a little bit better every day. And I stuck to it. However, I did relapse my first year. I had a very high stress relationship I was in. And, because of that, I had some things that triggered me, and my fault, but triggered me into a relapse. And I went on about a 3-day bender of whiskey-fueled, vodka-fueled, and cocaine-fueled. It was amazing. Just kidding. There was nothing amazing about it. But I couldn't believe it. I was so mad at myself. I had such a great year of sobriety. And literally, it was about 15 days before my first sober year. I'd have a 1 year fully sober, and I relapsed, and I did this. And, so I had to get rid of the girlfriend. I had to, put myself in a position where I could solely focus on my sobriety and making sure this would stay permanent. Because here I was, I just went 11 and a half months, and I relapsed again, 3 or 4 days again. And so I began to dive deeper, and that second year is what really changed me. I dove deeper to the nutrition game, and I became a health nut for reals. And being a health nut has changed my life, because I was able to repair the damage that I did. Once I did all this, I realized I literally had the format for a program, because the AA, as great as it is, didn't work for me, and there's a lot of programs out there that I tried, and the counseling that I tried that just didn't work, and it was using old tactics. What I learned was that I could heal myself and heal my alcoholism with good, clean nutrition and fitness. And that's the truth. That's how amazing our body is. And I think the other amazing part of this is that once I began that became my new addiction. That's the thing that I woke up every day going, okay, I can't wait to have my mocktails tonight that are nutrient-based and nutrient-dense mocktails that are repairing the damage that I did to my body. So it was a life-changing event for me, and I formatted it into a program, and I began to write it. And then I also started an online virtual coaching company where we help people transform. And it's not just alcohol or drugs. You can be, it could be food or processed food or sugar or anxiety or depression, any one of these things. So going into my second year of sobriety, I really honed in my nutrition, my supplementation, and my fitness, because that was the pathway that was going to get me to permanent sobriety. And it did. I really watched my life open up and flourish during that second year. Third year, I became an integrated health practitioner, level 2. So I wanted to know all the ins and outs of the human body and how alcohol affects it, and the best way to use nutrition and supplementation and fitness to repair and to heal alcoholism. And that's what I did. And that is the program that I've written